Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Solsty and today we're going to be going through a walkthrough of the Trial by Felfire Part 1, which includes the first 4 bosses. And this is Inquisitor Dakrel, which is the first boss of the 4. A little bit of backstory. So we play as Arana Starseeker, and Arana is Elise Starseeker's younger sister. The journey is about, it labels it on Hearthstone as a thrilling journey of self-discovery, but the main sort of backstory here is that we will be assembling a crew of outcasts and that we will be then fighting Mecha Jaraxxus at the end of the sort of 5-part series. So moving on to the first boss, what we've got here is Inquisitor Dakrel. His hero power is to destroy a friendly minion and to trigger its death rattle twice. The main sort of concern here would be tactically is just to kill the death rattles and to sort of finish them off on our own at our own pace, and then we can maintain board control. Unfortunately, this isn't really much of a challenge. The hero power is the same throughout the first section for all 4 bosses, and that is a 2 mana search through your deck and discover a card from your deck. So that gives you obviously the option of 3 to discover any cards that are in your deck. I'm just going through here, running through it, and then we'll skip right to the end because, as I said, this isn't very challenging. All it does is, as I said, you just need to stay on top of the death rattles. As soon as you're on top of those, the boss is fairly simplistic. As you can see, we've jumped to the end here. It's nothing difficult at all. You get a very standard beast package in the first against the first boss, and this sort of stays the same throughout. The one thing that accumulates throughout all of this is that you get these outcasts, which play quite a role in defeating each boss, and then those outcasts join your deck as you continue through the campaign. So as you can see here, there's a little bit of lore between each boss, a little bit of conversation. I'm not the biggest lore fan in the world, so I won't be going into too much detail on that, but that's it for the first boss. So anyway, let's jump straight into boss number 2. After defeating Inquisitor Dakrel, we then move on to Zergoth. Zergoth has the ability, as you can see there, to corrupt a card in an opponent's hand, and they have 1 turn to play it. It's very similar to the Hellgazer that we see in Hearthstone. As you can see here on the front as well, we then begin with the Dormant card, which awakens when 4 demons die. The effect is a Wind Fury Rush. It's a 6 mana card, but if played from hand as an outcast, it gains 3 Shaman cards to your hand. Obviously, these cards are all playing as outcasts. We don't get the benefit from, but then when they're added to your deck later on, you do get the benefit. As you can see here, we've sort of moved to the end of the fight. It's a very simplistic fight. It doesn't take long at all. It's all about just making sure we use the cards that we've got in our hand and then just finishing off the boss. Board control again here is essential. They do play Scrap Imps, Zergoth, and actually Zixor, and I think Baltharak as well, which is the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th bosses, all play Scrap Imps. So we do need to make sure here that we get on top of the board and maintain control. And they will primarily go for face with the AI, so we want to make sure that we're not losing that race. That's a very simple sort of cover up of boss 2, and then we'll move on to boss 3 now, which is Zixor Apex Predator. Moving on to boss 3, this is, as I mentioned, Zixor the Apex Predator. Zixor has a quite interesting and becomes the first sort of, not challenging, but the first boss where you have to think about the moves that you're making. Zixor has a 0 mana, gain 4 +4 attack this turn, and as you can see by the rotating yellow ring, that means that he will cast it every turn no matter what happens. We start with a creature that reads all adjacent minions have taunt and +1 attack. This is another outcast, and the outcast then also has the ability to summon the 2 minions that you'll see either side of it. I hadn't quite understood the principle of this fight. Obviously, this is the first and only time I've done it so far, but you do, as you see at the start, Natural Leader allows you to gather your outcasts. You then start again with this small sort of Fungalmancer guy, and you get the 2 mushrooms either side of him, which are part of his outcast ability. But as I said, his creature stats and his card reads all adjacent minions have taunt and +1 attack. Now, because of Zixor's use of his hero power every single turn, this will turn into a bit of a race to the finish. Zixor also has a lot of lifesteal minions in his deck. This includes a Life Drinker and also includes other sort of the 2/2 and the 2/1, a lot of zoo-like lifesteal minions. I didn't quite understand the principle of this fight very early on, so I actually have a very spell-heavy hand here. I would encourage anyone to fish for minions early and mulligan hard for the minions. Also use the hero power early on to make sure you get as many minions as possible. I, unfortunately, throughout this lost my Outcast, which led to a lot of face damage being tanked because Zixor was just freely able to attack my face. The one thing to note here with Zixor is that the AI will try to kill your minions if it can and if it's efficient to, but if it can't, it will go face. And we need to manage life total, as I said at the start, heavily by fishing for minions and staying on top of board. All of these fights in the first section are all board control related. There are slightly more racy ones. There's no specific spell abilities as such. The spells that we get are pretty bang average. There's no new spells as far as I'm aware that I've come across yet in my time playing. But as you can see, Zixor is continuously choosing to load up his attack, and this fight is just purely about outlasting. And once you get on top of the board, we can then ensure that we can kill him out. But in this case here, what I found was that trying to keep the 0/6s out of the way early on didn't really pay too much. I think what it's good is to do is to build outside of the 0/6s, which is what I'd advise doing. As I said, this fight isn't hard as such, but it does make you think about board placement especially. And what you want to be doing is making sure that obviously the majority of spells will accumulate minions on the right hand side of the board. So what I would do is when you're placing minions, make sure they go down on the left hand side. So coming back in towards the end of the battle, as you can see here, I've got quite a heavy amount of minions. I've got quite a bit of card advantage in my hand. This is about 3.5 minutes though later than where we sort of finished off the last clip, which just shows that this fight is pretty long actually. And I'm just looking at this now. This is probably going to be another couple of minutes. I got very unlucky here. Unfortunately, I summoned an Aviana off my Bamboozle, which means that unfortunately the Griffin was able to trade off with it. However, it's just about, as I said, maintaining on top of the board. You'll see here though what I mentioned earlier, which is that Zixor has a bit of a tendency to avoid minions it knows it can't kill, although here it actually made a pretty drastic mistake where it ended up attacking into my into my Garzrilla first, and then Zixor chose to attack the minion, which obviously ended up taking double the amount of damage he needed to take. But we're wrapping up the fight now, and this is getting towards the end. I don't really have a lot of concern at this point. The only thing is making sure we get down some taunts or making sure that we stay on top of healing up, which we can do, and then we seal out the fight very quickly. So on to my final turn. As you can see, I've got a lot of cards in hand. I did unfortunately get down to 7 life. This is primarily just through me, as I said, not placing things correctly. It should have triggered in my head. I had some snake traps early on that were all going down towards the right-hand side of the minion. What this meant, though, is that it was very easy to sort of break down the taunts. And as well, like I said, I was very spell-heavy. I didn't really choose to go with any minions early on, which I would have mulliganed for if I'm doing it again in future. And without further ado, we move on to the final boss, which is Balthorak. Balthorak has quite an interesting hero power and also has quite an interesting fight mechanic to it. Again, it is a board control style fight, but you can manage the board quite efficiently yourself. So as you can see here, we start with a card on our side of the board. Unfortunately, we lose that card very quickly at the start. So just to run you through to start with, Balthorak's hero power states that when a demon dies, draw a card and restore +10 health to your hero. We start with Karnuk, who is the Outcast, and he's a 3/7, and his ability reads Outcast to summon another minion, and also he has double all healing that happens with this when this character's alive. So obviously he's a lifesteal minion, which means that every attack he does heals for 6. And what happens right at the start, though, is that Baltharak plays a card that instantly steals your Karnak. And you must effectively kill the demons to fish for him. So, as I said at the start, the hero power is when a demon dies, draw a card and restore plus 10 health to your hero. So what we're aiming to do here is just totally clear board down. Baltharak is, I think, the third or second to last minion. Karnak is the third or second to last minion in Baltharak's deck, which means that obviously we need to fish for quite some time. As you can see here, Entombed in Rust is the first spell that Baltharak casts on his first turn, which steals your Karnak, the Outcast. One thing I stayed on top of very early on was just making sure that I had enough removal. You'll notice in this that we get Betrayals, and they are obviously very efficient. And we also get the Rogue Secret that stops any minion from attacking you and causes it to attack its neighbour. In the majority of cases in this fight, it is just worth trading off inefficiently into minions. Obviously, in this scenario, what I would normally do is to go face, is to use the Bamboozle and the Blackjack Stunner to sort of apply the pressure. However, what we're trying to do here is solely to draw down to Karnak. Baltharak goes out of cards very quickly. I'd say we probably get 6 turns maximum at full mana. And then after that, Baltharak's probably going to be out of cards. This is not about competing with health total. Baltharak will heal exceptionally quickly. There is just no way to charge him down. However, as you see here, we're getting through into the sort of smaller minions, the Fel Guards, and the Kobold Librarians, which is obviously drawing cards. Unfortunately for me, because I'd burnt through so many demons, the Kobold Librarian actually drew me the Karnak, which then leaves me with a very, very simple end to the fight. This fight, as I said, it's not difficult. I'd say of the first 4, I think Zixor is the most challenging. Zixor feels like you don't quite have the resources to plow through it simply. Also, Zixor feels like there's quite a lot of spells in your deck rather than minions, which obviously make it quite challenging. Baltharak is a totally different story. Baltharak, you feel like you've got tons of removal, and the Cold Light Oracle, which I actually kept in my mulligan, turned out to be an excellent choice. On reading the hero power originally, before I started, I was kind of contemplating if it's a draw mechanic, then it could be a draw mechanic that's a benefit or a detriment. So what I wanted to do is make sure that when you read those hero powers that force the opposing character hero to say heal or to destroy a minion, you want to make sure you've got as much removal or as much card draw, for example, as possible in your hand. That's kind of a good way of assessing these trials before we actually start doing them. As you can see here, we're just fatiguing out the boss. At no point did I think it was ever worth just going face. He draws so many cards that in the end you just get to easily plow through. I finished this with an abundant hand and plenty of mana and minions left over. So yeah, this fight I think is probably up there with Zergoth. So I would say that of the first 4, you've got Inquisitor Dakrel, which is the easiest, Zergoth and Baltharak, which as the second and fourth boss, and they're both fairly simple, just board control. And then you've got Zixor, the Apex Predator, which is the third boss and is the only one that I think really invokes any sort of thought. But obviously we'll see if that changes going into the next section. So thank you very much for watching this summary of the first videos. As you can see here, I'm just about to wrap up killing the boss, and then we'll all be done with. So yeah, that takes us then on to Trial by Felfire Part 2, which will be in an upcoming video. Thank you very much. I've been Solsty. Cheers.